I want economic opportunity to be spread across this land, north, south, east, and west, to all people, whatever their race, whatever their work, wherever they live. Pillage, looting, murder, and arson have nothing to do with civil rights. We seek not victory of conquest, but we do seek the triumph of justice. I am confident we shall overcome.
Lyndon Baines Johnson, often referred to as simply LBJ, was America's 36th president. He served from 1963, after the fatal shooting of President John F. Kennedy, until 1969. At first, a stunned nation rallied behind the ambitious new president. But as time went on, LBJ's dealings as a master politician caused many people to mistrust him. During his administration, Lyndon Johnson was successful in getting Congress to approve John Kennedy's social programs. But problems with America's involvement in the Vietnam War denied LBJ a second full term in office. Although his presidency ended in frustration and division, he left a vivid imprint on America. Hi, I'm Alexis Cohen at the LBJ Library and Museum in Austin, Texas. Lyndon Baines Johnson was born in a farmhouse near the central Texas town of Stonewall on August 27, 1908. He was the eldest of 5 children of Samuel Ely Johnson, Jr., a farmer and schoolteacher who also served in the Texas House of Representatives. His mother, Rebecca Baines Johnson, was also a schoolteacher. Lyndon was an active, curious child who learned the alphabet before he was 2 and could read by the age of 4. When he was 5, he and his family moved to nearby Johnson City, a town his grandfather had founded. Lyndon, his brother, and 3 sisters attended public schools in Johnson City. Lyndon did not like to study, but his mother made him do his lessons, and he usually made good grades. LBJ's love of politics began early. In high school, he and a friend won a county-wide debating competition, and LBJ became president of his class of 7 students. He graduated high school early, at 15, in 1924. His parents urged him to go on to college, but LBJ was through with school, at least for a while. Instead, he and some friends headed to California to find work. Lyndon hitchhiked up and down the West Coast, waiting on tables, washing dishes, and working as a farm laborer. After 7 months, though, he returned home where he found work building roads. Road building was hard work, and before long, LBJ realized he was sick of working with his hands. He wondered if he might do better, as he put it, working with my brain. To find out, he borrowed $75 from a local bank. Then, in February of 1927, enrolled in Southwest Texas State Teachers College in San Marcos. To pay his expenses, he worked as a janitor and developed an interest in campus politics. His first success came when he organized a political group called the White Stars and edited the college newspaper. Just 1 year after graduation, LBJ entered national politics when he campaigned for Richard M. Kleberg, a Texas Democrat running for the House of Representatives in 1931. When Kleberg won that election, he took 23-year-old LBJ with him to Washington. From the very beginning, LBJ knew how to get things done at the Capitol. On a trip back to Texas on September 12, 1934, LBJ met his future wife, Claudia Alta Taylor. Known as Lady Bird, in just over 2 months' time, LBJ and Lady Bird were married. LBJ's rise in national politics was just as fast as his courtship to Lady Bird. In 1935, President Franklin D. Roosevelt appointed the 26-year-old as Texas State Administrator of the National Youth Administration. At age 28, LBJ quit that job to run for Congress. He won a seat in the House of Representatives with almost twice as many votes as his nearest opponent. He was sworn in on May 14, 1937. Before long, President Roosevelt and the young Democratic congressman developed a warm, lasting friendship. LBJ spent 2.5 terms representing Texas in the House of Representatives.
Yesterday, December 7, 1941, a date which will live in infamy.
When the Japanese bombed the Pearl Harbor Naval Base in Hawaii on December 7, 1941, LBJ asked to be called for military service. 3 days later, he was sworn in as a Navy commander, the first U.S. congressman to put on a uniform in World War II. But his military service was short-lived. Several months later, President Roosevelt ordered him to return to Washington. He could serve the country better, the president said, as a congressman than as a sailor. By May of 1948, the Second World War was over, and LBJ now set his sights on serving in the U.S. Senate.
You are going to send Lyndon Johnson to the Senate next Saturday by the greatest vote that you ever sent a senator there.
Beautiful, beautiful Texas, where the beautiful blue bonnets roll.
As a senator from Texas, LBJ quickly rose in the ranks to become majority leader, responsible for keeping the Senate running smoothly. Skilled in give and take, he had a talent for persuading others to vote his way.
Step forward in a very important and delicate speech.
LBJ's political reputation came in handy at the 1960 Democratic National Convention, where Senator John F. Kennedy of Massachusetts was nominated to run for president.
On many others.
The person you select is your president. The weight he's carried, the burdens he knows, the decision he makes may well determine whether you live as free men.
Mr. Chairman, Wyoming's vote will make a majority to Senator Kennedy.
Kennedy was a liberal Northerner. He needed a conservative Southerner to balance the Democratic ticket. Johnson was a conservative Southerner.
Many others. On a distinguished running mate who brings unity and strength to our platform and our ticket, Lyndon Johnson.
When Kennedy invited LBJ to run as his vice president, LBJ quickly accepted. The elections of 1960 pitted Kennedy and Johnson against Republican Vice President Richard M. Nixon and Henry Cabot Lodge, Jr. of Massachusetts. Kennedy and Johnson won by a narrow margin and were sworn into office in January of 1961. As Kennedy's vice president, LBJ took a more active role in the government than had any previous vice president. But just shy of 3 years as president, John Kennedy was assassinated. Lyndon Baines Johnson assumed the presidency. On November 22, 1963, aboard Air Force One at Love Field in Dallas, Texas, LBJ took the oath of office as the 36th President of the United States. Later that night, from Washington, he promised the shocked nation, "I will do my best. That is all I can do. I ask for your help, and God's."
John F. Kennedy told his countrymen that our national work would not be finished in the first 1,000 days, nor in the life of this administration. But he said, "Let us begin."
President Johnson faced many problems when he became chief executive. High unemployment and racial tension at home, the possibility of nuclear war, and America's involvement in helping fight communist rebels in Vietnam. At first, he pushed hard to complete legislation started by President Kennedy. He urged quick passage of a tax cut and a strong civil rights bill. He also proposed a national war on poverty. LBJ enjoyed being president. He strolled on the White House lawn and often chatted with tourists. He met reporters informally and often gave speeches at widely separated places. Then he hurried back to Washington to get back to work. LBJ was known as the whirlwind president. The economy boomed during LBJ's first full term. He credited the large Democratic majorities in both houses of Congress for the success of his Great Society.
Lift them up and help them train and give them an education where they can make their own way.
Mr. Johnson proposes an education program that will ensure every American full development of his mind and skills. He says the beauty of America must be preserved as a green legacy, with water and air pollution ended. Beauty of mind, too, must be promoted. Cities should be imaginatively improved, and a broad health program must ensure medical care for the aged and needy.
Together, lawmakers increased federal aid to education, cut excise taxes, made stronger safety laws for automobiles, and established the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and the Department of Transportation. In 1964, he easily won re-election to his first full term in office, receiving 486 electoral votes to only 52 for his Republican opponent, Senator Barry M. Goldwater of Arizona. In 1965, Congress passed a voting rights law designed to ensure that African Americans could vote.
In the same room where President Lincoln signed the first Emancipation Order in 1861, President Johnson signed the 1965 Voter Registration Act and pledged to millions of Americans a new chance to find a political voice.
And initiated Medicare, a health insurance plan for older people.
Mr. Johnson chose to sign the bill here as a tribute to former President Truman. The new bill expands the 30-year-old Social Security program to provide hospital care, nursing home care, home nursing service, and outpatient treatment for those over 65.
But the widening war in Vietnam became Johnson's main problem. When he became president, America had about 16,000 military advisors in South Vietnam. By 1968, there were more than 500,000 U.S. troops fighting there. A bitter debate developed as to whether America should continue to fight in Vietnam at all. Demonstrations broke out all across the country. Then, race riots destroyed the ghetto slums of Chicago, Cleveland, Detroit, Los Angeles, New York City, and Newark. LBJ had to send in federal troops to stop the riots. Americans began to question whether LBJ's foreign and domestic policies were really working. His popularity began to drop. When Senators Eugene McCarthy of Minnesota and Robert F. Kennedy of New York both announced that they would challenge the president and seek the Democratic presidential nomination in 1968, LBJ shocked the nation by taking himself out of the race.
I shall not seek, and I will not accept the nomination of my party for another term as your president.
LBJ was true to his word. He did not run for a second full term as president. Richard M. Nixon won the presidential election of 1968. After Nixon's inauguration as America's 37th president on January 20th, 1969, LBJ and Lady Bird Johnson left the White House and retired to their ranch near Johnson City, Texas. LBJ avoided active politics once he left Washington, but in 1971 published a book of his memoirs. That same year, the Lyndon Baines Johnson Library opened at the University of Texas in Austin.
And if our efforts continue, and if our will is strong, and if our hearts are right, and if courage remains our constant companion, then, my fellow Americans, I am confident we shall overcome.
But LBJ rarely left his Texas ranch after that. In April of 1972, he suffered a series of heart attacks. He died at his ranch on January 22, 1973, and is now buried there in the family cemetery. Lyndon Baines Johnson, America's 36th president, is remembered as a shrewd politician who worked hard to fulfill President Kennedy's legacy and make America a great society. But to many, those accomplishments were overshadowed by war protests and the civil disobedience that marred the end of his second term in office.